Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of One-Eyed Heathen, Introduction and Voting. Here I intend to introduce the basic idea of my show, and then I intend to talk a little bit about voting as we are coming up on the 2022 midterm elections. So, thank you very much for tuning in, watching the channel, whatever I'm supposed to say to you, and welcome to the very first broadcast. Thank you for hanging in there. I would ask for your patience and kindness. Allow for some mistakes, low sound quality, bad editing, if I even edit, and allow for some absence of basic things like website, merch, social media, logo, Discord server, audio only podcasts, any of that shit. I am experimenting, playing, first broadcast, right? So, but do look down in the description for notes and links. So, content warnings. This episode does not have any content warnings. I will, however, give you a warning that there will be other content warnings on future episodes because I'm going to deal with some harsh topics. Poverty, drug addiction, sexual assault, child abuse, any of these sorts of things and more. Very harsh topics. And I do not have any goal to monetize any of these videos. They're going to get harsh, and I'm going to do my best to provide for content warnings and do my best to have the language be appropriate to the show. Not harsh as in inappropriate, but very blunt, very correct. No euphemisms. So, goals. I have several goals for this show. Provide useful and actionable information regarding social justice issues to the pagan community. Being pagan or any sort of religious community in the United States in an age of growing theocracy, you are part of a marginalized community. We are part of a marginalized community. We need to know how to navigate systems that are very often unsafe for us. We need to learn what to look out for when we are in danger. We need to learn where we can go for help. Okay? So, provide the same to other communities. Marginalized communities need to stick together. And I hope to provide information that's going to help people in other marginalized communities as well as my own. And those intersect, by the way. Provide information about the pagan community to external communities. It's great if you want to say to Christians, hey, we're not actually Satanists, but that's not enough. I'm not going to throw the Satanists under the bus for one. For another thing, we need to let Muslims know that we're not evil people. We need to let atheists know that we're not all what some would call crystal wavers that are involved in MLMs or something like that. We need to help Christians know that atheists are not evil baby eaters and that Muslims are not evil baby eaters and all that. Yes, so yeah, we need to all learn about each other. Provide information about different elements within the pagan community to other community members. Example shows about different pagan practices. There are many podcasts that talk about different pagan practices and different deities and different pagan organizations. My goal in this is to bridge divides that still exist. For example, even though many Wiccans were part of the old guard and did a lot to advance the rights of pagans in the United States and did a lot to influence the rituals that pagans are doing nowadays. Many people would discount Wiccans as all complete and utter superficial fluff bunnies. That's not the case. Neo-pagans versus Reconstructionists. I fall more on the side of neo-paganism. However, these are not opposite terms. A Reconstructionist who does not worship a god that theologically is not allowed to change can certainly find ways of adapting things so that they are appropriate for today in the context of the setting in which we live, as well as their ability to actually pay for what there is that they're doing, for their skill level, and for things like what feels best versus what feels not as good. And a Reconstructionist will allow for change. Likewise, a neo-pagan will understand that attempting to reconstruct rituals is a way of honoring gods or honoring ancestors or honoring your own practice, honoring etc., etc., etc. And useful skills can be learned in attempting to reconstruct these practices, even when you are smart enough to know that you don't have to actually kill cows in your apartment. You learn history, and in learning history you are learning research methods and mythology, but you also may be learning other skills like wood carving or public speaking or carving bone, etc., and so on and so forth. There are things to be learned among different pagans. Not only do we need to stand in solidarity with other communities, we must stand in solidarity with each other. Okay, so we can learn about each other and then hopefully bridge these divides. Okay, there are a lot of topics I would like to cover. Some topics are pagan specific, other topics are not pagan specific. So, some pagan specific topics are rights of pagans in different situations and places. Examples: law courts, schools, military, prison, mental health care, the workplace. Organizing events such as pagan pride festivals. What are your legal rights in actually setting up a pride festival in your city? How do we navigate this? Inclusivity in ritual. We may think that our rituals are inclusive and take that for granted, when actually they may not be. And if we're going to have an ethical and kind community, we're going to have to recognize people with different abilities and disabilities and sensitivity needs, etc. Okay, inclusivity in ritual. Okay, pagans in recovery. In the United States, most recovery programs are Christian and very Christian. And that's the ones people know about. Alcoholics Anonymous, right? But there is a growing movement toward secular recovery, or just recovery that is inclusive of all different religions. Okay. So, secular invocations, such as before the meeting of the state legislature, many town hall meetings and legislative meetings will allow for invocations and therefore secular invocations. Okay, and of course these are not the only topics, these are just examples. Let's see. Some topics that are not pagan specific: surviving domestic abuse, navigating healthcare as a trans person, resources for unhoused people, organizing events, etc., food and clothing drives, conventions, demonstrations, etc., nonviolent protest methods, media literacy, disability awareness and accessibility, and of course, the list goes on. More as they come. Okay, in the future, I hope to have guests talking about all these topics as well as many other topics. I hope to not be the only one here just doing research about all these topics and only having cursory things to share. I really, really want volunteers to come on this program and share a little bit about what they know in their experience. Okay, so this first show's topic is voting. Yes, voting. I am basically going to tell you to get out there and vote. So, topic voting. Yes, I'm reading from notes if you haven't figured that out. Definition for my purposes, just so you and I are on the same page. Voting in electorate, making a collective decision such as deciding occupants of a political office or amendments to a state constitution. That's the long and the short of it. Okay, this episode is meant to apply to elections in the United States of America and is meant to be aired before the 2022 midterm elections. Yes, the date November 8th is fast approaching. Okay, so and there are many other deadlines that if you didn't get to them yet, you have missed them, but maybe you can still catch early voting in your state. Okay, so why vote in the midterms? Most people don't care to. Most people just stick with the presidential elections. So I'm going to tell you why from the standpoint of issues as well as from the standpoint of logistics, how much you could influence the course of the nation by the numbers, not exact statistics, but just letting you know some general numbers, demonstrating that yes, by voting in the midterms we can and will affect things. So the issues, there's a lot of issues that can be affected by who gets voted into office in this election. Alright. Inflation for everyone is the top issue. Abortion is the second most important issue for most people. And I read for Republicans, inflation was the most important, and for Democrats, abortion. Not a huge logic leap there. Anyway, January 6th hearings, healthcare, immigration. These are all sort of the most important issues, and you can probably guess which is which as far as particular parties. So now let's talk a little bit about the logistics. Every seat in the House of Representatives is up for grabs because their elections are every 2 years. Okay, so literally the House of Representatives could be entirely replaced, or it could remain the same, or we could have a massive blue wave or a massive red wave. 1/3 of Senate seats are up for grabs because their elections are every 6 years. So let that sink in. 1/3. All of the House, 1/3 of the Senate. That's a lot. So, and there are 36 governors. 36 governor positions. That's 36 governors. New governors are going to be happy. So, obviously you can't vote for 36 governors. You're only going to be voting for one. But that just goes to show you that there will be 36 states that are going to decide if their governors are going to veto bans on abortion or if they're going to sign those into law, as an example. Alright? 36 states. That's more than half the country. Is obviously statewide. Election officials, state legislators, local positions, ballot initiatives, right. Okay, so head dog catcher type stuff. Well, obviously I'm being facetious, but obviously there's lots of local positions available, and amendments and addendums and what, all those things on the end of the ballot and the legalese. So local politics is actually more important than you would think, because people get elected to school boards, people get elected to state legislatures. These are the people who actually write the laws and vote to pass the laws, okay? These are governors and mayors. These are people who can make your city become a wonderful city, or become a unique household. Okay, so what are midterm elections? Okay, these are the sources. What are midterm elections and why are they important? That's from the Washington Post. Again, links will be in the description. Abortion and inflation, and that's from NPR, National Public Radio. Alright, so who gets to vote and who doesn't get to vote? And I'm going to be speaking in very general terms, obviously. So, who's qualified? Are a U.S. citizen, and some places allow non-citizens to vote. Meet state's residency requirements, obviously depends on the state. Are 18 or will be 18 at the time of the election. Are registered to vote in your state. It says, who cannot vote? What disqualifies you? Non-citizens. Some people post felony convictions, depends on your state. Mentally incapacitated people, those standards differ by state. Citizens living in U.S. territories cannot vote in presidential elections. So I think that's very interesting. That would mean they can vote in the midterms. Interesting. Okay. So, the source here, who can and can't vote in U.S. elections, usa.gov. Okay, when? There's different deadlines for different states. So the big voting day, the main event where most people will be going to the polls, is Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. Alright? Now, you can do early voting or vote by absentee ballot, but I'll get to that. But that's the big day. So, let's see. So Google midterm dates. Okay, I'm gonna say Google midterm deadlines for your state, since different states will have different deadlines for things like registration or requesting mail-in ballots. Alright, so I have a short list of Georgia deadlines here just as an example, because Georgia is my state. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly read off a list of dates for Georgia. Okay, so October 11th is deadline to register in person, deadline to register by mail, deadline to register online. Okay, October 17th, first day to vote early in person. October 28th, deadline to request a mail-in ballot. November 4th, last day to vote early in person. November 8th, deadline to deadline to mail ballot by, and election day. But these dates are going to vary for your states. So dates for states. I'm still not editing this. Okay, so this is from Georgia's midterm elections 2022 NBC News, where I don't have to spend time on this. Just Google your local polling place for your state. That's it. Find your polling place, vote.org. That is the resource. That's going to help you. That's going to get you there. Okay? Let's see. Okay, here we go. How? So how do you vote? Because you might not know how to vote. My hope is you already do, and I really don't mean to insult your intelligence, but there's going to be somebody out there that's like, okay, I want to vote. How do I vote? So, first you got to register to vote in your state, and these deadlines are going to change. And if you're not registered for the midterms in 2022, you're not voting in the midterms in 2022, but register to vote in future elections. Go to the polls. But there's also early voting and absentee ballots. And disabled voters have a lot of options. I do want to mention some things here for disabled voters, because that it's often overlooked. All right. Let's see. Okay. Law requires accessible polling places. Accommodations include headphones, large controls for mobility issues, sip and puff devices. For mobility issues, allow visually impaired people to use an app to read their ballot to them, allowing some people to not wait in line. And some other accommodations are adaptive voting machines that allow seated voting, visual mode, audio mode, tactile mode. And some people can bring in assistance, and poll workers, of course, will be happy to help you. So if you're disabled and you choose to go to your polling place, you don't necessarily have to wait in line. Go find a poll worker, let them know you're disabled, and they will help you out, and they will get you the accommodations you need. Okay. So sources again. How to register? That's from usa.gov. Will get you to information for your state. Okay, voting with physical challenges. Georgia Secretary of State. Disability Rights Washington. Disability Guide to Voting. GCDD. All right, and so let's sum all of this up. Okay, so why are we doing this again? Because there's lots and lots of important issues that are going to be decided depending on who we allow in office, and we can do a lot just on account of the numbers. Many seats in Congress, as well as state legislators and other local positions, are set to be filled. Do you want to keep the incumbent, or do you want to replace them? Do you want a blue wave? Do you want a red wave? What are we doing? Okay. Make sure you are eligible. Register to vote. Make yourself aware of deadlines. And the big one is November 8th, 2022. Find your local polling place or make plans to vote another way. And you have many options, including in-person early voting, and absentee ballots. And disabled voters have many options for assistance. And I really do hope this helps somebody in the process to actually voting in the 2022 midterm elections. And I really hope that this show helped you understand and give you an idea as to whether or not you actually want to come back and try and listen to the show again. You are a trooper. So thank you again for listening to the first episode. I'm sure there were many things horribly, despicably, deplorably, embarrassingly wrong with the first episode of this broadcast. But if you're listening this far, you hung in there. And I thank you for bearing with any sort of mistakes that I make along the way. I do hope listeners return for future episodes. I really want to use this podcast to do some good for my fellow human beings crawling around this pale blue dot. I just really hope that I can do something good for somebody in this world before I leave it. So, with all that, again, thank you so much for listening. With all that, I'll say so long, and there are 4 lights.